Welcome to this week's show, where Prince Harry is back on the charm offensive in America, joking with James Corden, talking football and even ranking himself among Britain's greatest Harrys. But is it all an attempt to move on from his disastrous UK visit? Plus, Meghan is said to have felt humiliated by the way Harry's trip unfolded. So was she right to stay away, or should she have been by his side? We'll also ask whether the monarchy is Britain's last great constant as King Charles appoints his fourth Prime Minister in less than 4 years. And as Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson reach their 40th wedding anniversary, was their marriage the beginning of the modern royal soap opera? I'm Matt Wilkinson, Royal Editor of The Sun, and joining me to unpack it all are Royal Editor at Hello Magazine, Emily Nash, and Talk TV host Mark Dolan. Welcome to you both. Now, look, if we were to rank the four best, greatest Marks and the four greatest Emilys in Britain, you would both obviously be in the list. But where would you rank Harry?
Well, the bottom line is that he's one of the most famous men in the world. And I will say that notwithstanding the awful war of words about Buckingham Palace accommodation before his UK return, notwithstanding all of the various issues over the last few years following Megxit, including the book Spare and the awful Harry and Meghan documentary series, this guy's on a roll. So he's the winning Harry at the moment.
Oh, do you think?
Yeah.
Because this is he did an interview, didn't he, with James Corden, and they joked, because the previous week they joked about who were the four best Harry Potter, Harry Styles, Harry Kane or Prince Harry. He placed himself third, Mark, but you're saying he's top of the list.
Well, you mentioned Harry Kane. I think it's back of the net for Prince Harry, because what we're seeing, and we've seen over the last 12 months, particularly following the Clarence House face-to-face summit in September of last year, is the gestation of a second rival court. And it's looking to be in rude health. And of course, it's headquartered in Montecito, California, but we're seeing an office, a satellite location in the UK. And of course, before we came on air, you mentioned that Harry will be back in September. So we're going to see a lot more of this guy, and he's got some momentum. So he's a happy Harry at the moment.
So Mark, you've placed him at number one. I have to admit, I wasn't expecting you to say that.
Not by choice, and I say that with no pleasure at all.
The word greatest obviously comes with so many connotations. And I know it was just a jokey chat that he had, and we'll get on to a little bit about what he was talking about on this James Corden chat. But Emily, where do you place him?
I think I'd have to agree with his own placement as things stand. Sorry, Mark, to disagree with you. But Harry Kane has obviously had a fantastic few weeks. Didn't quite end the way that he wanted it to.
Move on, Emily, move on.
Yeah, I won't mention that any further. I think it was a fairly honest assessment by him, really, and an interesting one, because he's been through a lot. I think he probably would rightly have concerns about public perceptions of him in the UK at the moment. Can you imagine if he'd put himself first? It just would have gone down like a lead balloon.
What do you make of that chat, though? Because it just reminded me of, he is a lad. He is early 40s. He was a bit of a lad when he was younger. Maybe not so much of a lad now. But that's what that conversation was about. It was about a comedian friend, James Corden. They've hung out before. Several years ago, they did a little comedy skit in Beverly Hills when they were driving around together, drinking tea. What do you think about the way he was presenting himself in that? Because he did have a particularly difficult week in the UK, but in that chat, it was very similar to the Joe Marler one a couple of days before, where he was showing off, being a bit of a geezer. What do you reckon?
I mean, it was like night and day, wasn't it, compared to the sort of whitewash statement he made after the court judgment was handed down in the case against Associated. But this was really interesting because it was a bit more of the Harry that we all sort of knew and loved back in his heyday as a member of the royal family. Something that he's actually railed against himself and said, actually I was always seen as the Joker. I felt like he was leaning into that side of his personality a little bit in both those shows. Although, interestingly, I think certainly the James Corden one had been planned for before his visit to the UK. But I would imagine that his team are very keen to sort of move on from that war of words with the palace, and then also the statement, calling out the judge, actually, and questioning the judgment itself.
Yeah, it was a little bit light after everything that had happened. Was it authentic? And I ask this as a football fan, and I'm sure we're all football fans at the moment because the World Cup's been huge views in America. Hopefully they've been watching it as well. But he was talking about football. That's very much I hate to say it, but it's very much the kind of thing for Prince William has been weighing into. Is Harry an authentic football fan?
No, he's not. And actually it'll stick in the craw for William, who is obsessed with Aston Villa. And we saw when they won that major European trophy for the first time in decades that it meant the world to him. And he's been on the Villa Fans podcast. This guy lives and breathes football. Harry doesn't. But what we're seeing is a development in the Harry brand. He's moving away from this sort of global ambassador figure, this influencer, and instead back to the clown prince, back to the entertainer, cosplay royal. And I think that's tricky because I think it doesn't sit very well with the rather sort of woke, stately Sussex brand that Meghan's been working on for years. And I don't think it sits well with the idea of Harry being back in the royal fold, lighting farts on TikTok and talking about his nether regions.
I haven't seen that video, Mark.
Well, it's going to go viral. But the bottom line is that, it's a shift, and I think it smacks of desperation. We know that the charities are struggling at the moment. I mean, I'm hearing with Invictus, we know that they're losing sponsors. Could next year be the last Invictus? At which point, no Invictus, no Harry. It's his entire identity, that project. There's not much money coming in. And so it seems he's made a calculation, well, I'll just be this kind of public royal figure and I'll be the celebrity prince. But I don't think it's a good look.
Well, there's no doubt with Invictus, as you say, that next year is going to be incredibly important, and the funding thing will be an issue we'll be talking about in the next couple of years, because I know there has been issues, but there is money. It seems like it is going ahead, but it has to have huge exposure for it to succeed. And Harry brings that kind of exposure. It's what kind of exposure it is, and what's the impact, I suppose. With Harry, if you don't mind me saying, you've known or you've worked near or you've reported on Harry Emily for many, many years. Do you recognise this character that we saw with James Corden?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he was always very fun to cover. I remember, us going on tour with him and taking him on in a pub quiz, for example. So that is actually authentic to his personality. And I think we've not seen it as much in the last few years. I mean, he's obviously older, he's got a family, he's a grown man. A whole lot of water has gone under the bridge in terms of his family and the things that he said and done. And so I can see why it's hard to remember that element of his personality now, but I think that was always there. And I mean, you just have to look at his friendship with James Corden. I mean, he spoke at their wedding, didn't he? He was a kind of master of ceremonies at the wedding reception. That, again, is an authentic friendship that goes back many years. So I do feel that while it looks like a bit of a leap, it isn't too far away from how he used to operate. But he is doing it now from a position of relative uncertainty.
And it's a deliberate pivot, isn't it? And I think it reflects the failure of the Sussex brand, which is also why I believe that Harry and Meghan are working so hard to get back into the royal fold, because things aren't working in America. Of course, we know that Netflix, are not that interested in any of the production ideas that Harry and Meghan have. And of course, let's not forget, Ted Sarandos tore up the retailer agreement with Meghan to sell the flower sprinkles and the spread. So things are not going swimmingly in America. And I think that the decision maybe is to go down the celebrity route. And, because, I totally agree, it is the old Harry. But the question is, why is he back? And I think it's because it hasn't worked, this idea of Harry and Meghan being these global figures, sort of shoulder to shoulder with the Obamas and the Clooneys.
Can I throw something to you then, Mark? Emily's talking about the old Harry, and she's right. Just praising you as much as I possibly can. But you've seen Harry operate over a number of years and reported on for a number of years and recognised that behaviour. I'll just throw this to you: is that behaviour that we saw there with Joe Marler podcast and having a laugh with James Corden talking about football? Is that not necessarily the old Harry, but the Harry that you see when he's not with Meghan?
Yeah, it's my observation just from a body language point of view that Harry only looks really happy when he's in the UK. And he's been here a couple of times over the last 12 months and he seems relaxed here. It's been well reported that he misses his friends, misses the lifestyle. I don't think that California is the correct habitat for the lesser spotted Harry. I just don't think it's an environment in which he thrives. And so, when he's on the Joe Marler show, I thought it was quite entertaining, and it was the old Harry who, let's not forget, was the most popular member of the royal family, ahead even of Elizabeth in certain polls. So it was nice to see, but my big question is why? Because if you look at the Sussexes, and I believe led by Meghan, they are pathologically transactional and everything happens for a reason. And I don't think it's an accident that suddenly Harry has turned into this wacky entertainer.
I have to disagree with you on that. I do think that both the Marler podcast and the James Corden one featured heavy mentions of Invictus. So I do think that was part of him trying to preserve that going forward. And let's not forget, they've just announced that it will be hosted. Oh no, that South Korea, I believe, are going to be hosting it in 2029. So they certainly
But is
envisage
that
a future
nailed on?
for it.
Is South Korea nailed on? 2029? I mean, that's a long time
Someone will
from
have
now,
to find
isn't
money
it?
for it, won't they?
Yeah.
A
Got any in your back
lot
pocket?
depends on it.
Well, I know I might have to dig deep. And well, it's a separate story, isn't it? But, you know, the Daily Mail, the Associated newspapers, losing that case has been a big setback too. And I just feel that Harry's running out of road. He's running out of road as this global influencer. He's running out of road as an entertainer, running out of road on the charity sector. And I think, therefore, what's he got left? It's going to be his royal links. And I think that's why we're going to see more of him.
Well, we might see more of him. We'll talk about that later on in the show, whether we'll see more of him possibly this year. But I just want to dwell a little bit further on that hectic week that we had when Harry was over, Meghan was over with Lilibet and Archie. We didn't see them, obviously. But there's been an article in People magazine, and we know the People magazine are very close links to, I would suggest, the California side of the House of Montecito. And I'll just read out what they reported this week. They said that a source known to the couple told the magazine that Meghan would have felt humiliated watching the public back and forth of the trip. What do we think of that? Do you think Meghan would have been really humiliated about what happened?
Well, it's all Orwellian doublespeak, isn't it? Because they've humiliated themselves by having a war of words with the palace about Harry's accommodation at Buckingham Palace, which didn't need to happen, but it's vintage Sussex behaviour. We saw that with the row at Kris Jenner's 70th birthday celebrations when there was this alleged opt-out in the invitation for photographs, which was swiftly rebuked by the Kardashian camp saying no such opt-out existed. Meanwhile, with Buckingham Palace, the palace is saying we offered Harry accommodation. Then we're hearing from the Sussexes there was no accommodation. Then we said yes, then it was too late. So if we talk about humiliation, you know, who's got the smoking gun on that one?
What do you think it means by humiliating? Was she gutted because she was left out of being on the front row, being seen, or what?
I think it must have been very difficult to have proposed the idea of them coming as a family and then for that to sort of be off the table, publicly at least. But I do think she's been quite careful to distance herself from certainly the court cases and the legal difficulties. That's something that I think, having founded her brand, she's really wanted to keep separate. That's been Harry's fight, hasn't it, and his battle. And also when it does come to the family stuff, I think it's a diplomatic move to sort of step into the background on that because, you know, whatever you think of her, she has been blamed for a lot of it. And I do think that whatever the rights and wrongs of that are, positioning herself away from that is a smart move.
Well, I think that it's not very wifely to abandon your husband when he's just lost a court case against the publishers of the Daily Mail. And if I was Harry, I'd feel personally very wounded. But that's, again, classic Meghan, that she doesn't want negative headlines, even if it comes from her own spouse.
Would you think this is
She hasn't got a loyal bone in her body. Look at her treatment of her father, Thomas Markle Sr. Look at her treatment of former friends like Piers Morgan, who introduced her to the UK media scene. Minutes later, she tries to get him fired from his show as a breakfast TV host.
Do you think this is why these kind of phrases were coming out? Because they realised that it wasn't a very good look to not see Meghan, if you take my point there. Because another source said that Meghan's very supportive, in quotes, of Harry, but there's a lot of sadness over how the week unfolded, that she wasn't able to be by his side. Is that genuine?
No, they generate the sadness. They are responsible for that. I mean, Harry and Meghan as a brand, it's a misery machine, which just brings conflict and negative headlines. Look at that public row with Sophie Chandauka over Sentibale, a charity that Harry's lost control of now. And Harry rebuked by the Charity Commission for making the POW public. This is what they do. It's just, the currency is conflict. But what they do is they behave abominably and then blame everyone else. So I've got no sympathy at all. And I think it's Charles that has every right to feel a sadness about how this all played out. He's been so generous giving his blessing to the royal return, and particularly seeing Harry, Meghan and the kids on royal property. And, it did look like Harry and Meghan were going to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory after that row over accommodation. But still, the king stuck with it. They had their meeting, which is why I'm still saying that Harry's essentially had a good trip, but not without its controversy.
Well, good news to everybody here, because we expect in September, as always happens every year, Prince Harry does come back to the UK. I remember last year was quite a long week as well, Emily.
Yeah.
What are we expecting in September? Will it be the same circus, the same will they, won't they? Will Meghan and the children come? Is it going to be chaos again in September?
I mean, I hope not, for our sakes, Matthew, but it's always, comes with the uncertainties, doesn't it? And a large part of that is down to the security. We've found out this week that he's continuing to pursue that case. It seems like he just won't take no for an answer. And I guess a lot will depend on that. But they have now proven to us that they can come to the UK, that it is possible for him to bring Meghan and the children. I mean, that's why
they've lost that argument, haven't they?
Well, that's why they were in a royal residence, though, because that was the only place I think that they were sort of guaranteed that sort of setup. They won't have the freedom to come and go as they please. And I think that's at the heart of this.
It's interesting because they did have the freedom to come and go and please. And I've seen and I've read elsewhere where people have almost criticised papers or said, oh, it's unbelievable that newspapers and everyone wasn't able to get photographs. Look, we weren't really looking. To be quite honest, if Meghan turns up with 2 young children,
that's completely off limits.
It's completely off limits. And we've seen in their, the 6-part documentary where they were talking about they were being followed by scooters and paparazzi and stuff like that. I keep saying that when they come over with the children, that's not the climate. That's just not actually going to happen. And you're right, what you both were saying there, that it does prove that they can just come in, go to a royal residence and see the family without all the circus. But
I think actually quite cleverly, King Charles has called Harry and Meghan's bluff because effectively I believe that the Sussexes were using the kids, leveraging Archie and Lily to engineer the royal return. And so King Charles said, brilliant, in that case, behind closed doors, at a royal property, no fanfare. Well, that's unfortunate because I believe that the Sussexes would like to have the bells and whistles and would like to have the photograph, which would have been a PR coup for them and for their brand in America. They didn't get it. Charles is like, fine, you want me to see my grandchildren? Let's do it. But it's going to be a private affair. And that's of little returnable value to the Sussexes.
Well, maybe they're playing a longer game, Mark. Maybe they're playing a longer game and obey by the rules because we will move on from the Sussexes at some stage, don't worry. But we have a long summer and all the family go to Balmoral and Harry's due here in September. Could we see a little kind of weekend squeezed in Balmoral where the Montecito family could come over?
I think it depends on who else is under the roof at that point. I can't see a world in which William and Catherine would be there at the same time. I think that would probably be a step too far.
But we often know when William and Catherine are going in the family. There's often a little period at the end of the week and they go to church. The family often have their kind of weeks booked in.
Yeah, and I mean, that would be a hell of a turn up for the books, wouldn't
it? And
do
you
you
know
what
I think this whole story about security, it's fascinating that you've said that he's going to continue that battle. I mean, Harry does not have the Midas touch when it comes to legal action of late. And of course, he lost against the British government in his efforts to get the army
we have
protection.
the same Home Secretary that she hasn't been shuffled out, so that's not going to change.
And she's a formidable figure, Shabana Mahmood, and I don't think she'll take this one lying down. But I think, I spoke to Ken Wharf about it. He said this is not about Harry's security. It's about the blue lights and the cop cars and the fanfare. And it's my view that the reason why Harry wants that armed royal security is so that when he's in the UK, he's royal. And I think that is a strategic impulse which would most likely be encouraged by Meghan as well, because every time they come to the UK, if they have the 7-car cavalcade, if they have the blue lights and the helicopter and the SWAT team and all the rest of it, that's the kind of flex. Those are the optics that I believe the Sussexes crave. So, like I said earlier, what they got is what they said they wanted, which is to spend time with the king and the grandkids. But that's, of course, not really what they wanted.
Well, don't forget, in Ukraine a couple of weeks or a couple of months ago, there was a quote that came out where he said he still perceived himself as a working royal. And there's been a lot written in the last couple of weeks about whether there are attempts to rewrite Megxit.
Why is Harry making such a fuss of the royal security? As you said, as we've all said, it's been proved that it's possible for the family to come back every so often quite safely. And I think it's it's to do with Harry's long-term ambitions. And I suspect he'll probably... Do you think he'll get the security eventually?
I don't know. Well, I think probably in order for the Home Office to really draw a line under this, they probably do need to conduct the risk management board that was agreed in front of a judge. And at that point, if they still decide it's not available to him, then he has no further argument with that. I think their current argument is that, in his camp, is that the due process hasn't been followed. I think let's let that happen. Let's let them decide this properly and then draw a line under it once and for all.
Yeah, do you know, one person said to me that he has to be careful what he wishes for because if he loses that, where else does he go?
Yeah.
And someone else was saying to me, well, journalists should want him to get his security so that it's great for you guys because he'll come back with all the family. But after that week we had and looking forward to a week in September, I don't want them to get security because it's too busy.
He's also arguably less safe with the royal security because then it's very clear where he is at all times. Whereas what they did do is came in under the radar.
Yeah. Interesting. Now, as you pointed out, we did not get a photograph and we probably will not see a photograph of the whole family there with the King, Camilla, at Highgrove. But what we did see is a photograph of King Charles with his fourth Prime Minister. And I worked out it's 3 years, 10 months.
A bit less cute than the grandchildren.
A bit less than the grandchildren, just Andy Burnham. But maybe more important, how important is this for the King? How important is for him to have a relationship, to see the Prime Minister? I mean, some of you maybe don't understand that the King actually gets a weekly, private, confidential audience with his Prime Minister after appointing his potentially fourth Prime Minister. But why is it important for our country and the royal family that the King can have a relationship with the Prime Minister?
Well, I think it's because he projects stability. And thank God, to quote that lovely lady from Bristol, not another one. This is the fourth in however long. Brenda. And I think that what we really need is continuity at this point, and we're not getting it from the government. And Charles is someone who does provide that, just as his mother did beforehand. And whatever you think of the monarchy, they are the one constant in our society at the moment, while everything's changing. And he's now a real elder statesman, and he has the experience of multiple prime ministers already. He's able to offer good advice, but he's seen things come and go. He's seen ministers come and go. He has strong views, as we know, on things. But he's also got a lot of wisdom, and I hope that that's something the new Prime Minister can tap into, because he's really kind of a sounding board and it's almost a moment of therapy, I think some former Prime Ministers have described it.
I think the weekly audience between the King and the Prime Minister of the day is one of the great aspects of the monarchy. And Mrs Thatcher, notwithstanding her public rivalry with the Queen, because I think at one point Mrs Thatcher thought she was head of state and put in her place by Elizabeth, but notwithstanding that, as the two alpha female figures, she described the weekly audiences with the Queen as a great comfort, which from a formidable character like the Iron Lady is quite something. And Blair has also spoken of how wise and how worldly the Queen was back in the day. We've seen the same from Charles. Charles is an incredibly clever and knowledgeable man, a keen historian, and capacious life experience in this unique role as Prince of Wales and now King. So I think it's just the most wonderful thing. Anyone that's got any doubts about the monarchy, when you look at that tradition, going back to Queen Elizabeth and her first Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, no less, this young woman being informed about the government's plans for the week by that iconic figure. So Andy Burnham will benefit greatly from the King's Council, and of course it's confidential. Mm-hmm. And the King is probably more politically proactive than Elizabeth was, and therefore may offer more proactive advice. But it does remind you of the importance of the monarchy, the stability it provides. I'm also reminded of when Liz Truss became Prime Minister. Do you remember King Charles's reaction?
Well, I certainly remember when she arrived back after, the transition, the change of reign, and I think he said, "Oh, you're back again."
Yes,
he?
And I also think he added the words, "Oh dear."
Yeah, he did.
Which was damning.
What do you think with Charles? Obviously, he's got lots of challenges. He's got his family. He has to deal with Andrew. He has to deal with Harry. He has to deal with Meghan. But he also has to deal with a revolving door of prime ministers.
Do you think it's a reverse therapy? Do you think he's going to say, "Mr. Burnham, hear me out. I've got a lot going on at home at the moment." Maybe it'll work like that.
Yeah, why not? But what do you think is the bit most challenging to him? Is it working with the revolving door of politicians, or is the problems with his family?
I think the personal stuff must probably be the most wounding, I would imagine. But it is challenging because every time there's a new government, he has to get to know different ministers, understand different approaches to policy. It's a complete changeover. And obviously he doesn't get that involved in any of it, but he is a consummate professional, and he will want to be fully briefed on as much as he can. So it's a lot to take in every time.
What's been in more chaos is a word I've used twice today, but what's been in more chaos? Has it been British politics or the royal family for the last 5 or 6 years?
Wow, that's a brilliant question.
It's a good top trumps, Matt, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the issue you've had with the Sussexes and the royal family is that a lot of this chaos, as I was saying earlier, I think it's by design. I actually think it's Harry and Meghan's currency. It's interesting listening to Thomas Markle Jr., who's Meghan's half-brother. Now, don't get me wrong, his YouTube show is a bit of a white-knuckle ride. It's not for everyone. But one of the things he said in a recent video was that Meghan actually likes the negative headlines and the conflict because it's just noise, and that's ultimately what she craves. So I think that's the one side of it. The politics side of it, yeah, that's difficult, isn't it? I mean, that is our democracy. And I think it's really a good look for the monarchy that whilst the prime ministers come and go, the king remains.
Will the instability worry Charles, or as you point out, that he revels because of the fact that he can be that pillar of stability?
No, I think it will worry him enormously. I think that he loves this country. He feels responsible for it as head of state, and he will be world weary about this conveyor belt of prime ministers. And he is an incredibly bright man. He probably would be a decent prime minister himself. He's got an extraordinary work ethic. He's a very ethical and principled guy. And actually, unlike a lot of these politicians, he hasn't been on a journey. I mean, Andy Burnham, there's a joke about Andy Burnham, a Blairite, a Brownite and a Corbynite go into the pub, and the barman says, "What do you want to drink, Andy?" Because the guy, he's been on more journeys than Phileas Fogg. The king, very consistent, passionate about the environment for decades.
Well, I think that's one thing that probably does concern him, is that things that we want to get changed or achieved are probably being held up by the constant changes. So we know he's very passionate about environment, housing, things like that, something William's also very interested in. And the problem is every time there's a reshuffle, people are starting again from scratch.
We do have a lot of viewers from around the world. So we are focusing on British politics, but I think we need to, just because we have had, another change in Prime Minister. But Emily, when I was watching Andy Burnham when he was outside 10 Downing Street giving his first speech, the first policy initiative, he said that he was going to end homelessness.
Yeah.
Now, suddenly that chimes bells in a royal editor's mind, because that's Prince William's thing.
Do you think William rang him up and had a word?
What do you think? Do you think that they have collaborated, but they have no projects running together?
No.
They have met at events. I think it was Centrepoint. I can't remember. I remember we may have seen him at an event. But do you think they would end? We're talking about the King and Burnham working together. Do you think William and the Prime Minister?
I mean, in as much as William can ever get closely involved in politics, which is not much, but it will be music to his ears to know that this is now at the top of the government's agenda. And I do think he's been really influential in that. You know, he has really drawn attention to a very unsexy topic, but something that is not being resolved by generations now. And it's something that he has made part of his life's work. So I'm sure there'll be quite a few conversations coming up.
Well, I think it's a happy coincidence because it demonstrates how in step with public opinion and how in step with the big issues facing the country the royal family are. To be so focused on the environment, well, Charles called that early and he got that right. I mean, he used to be mocked for his organic farming and talking to the plants. Well, they're not laughing now, are they? He's won that argument. And then similarly, the issue of house building. I mean, the big issues facing the country, we don't have enough houses. That's a big focus of William's. And then, of course, the issue of the homeless as well, which is a tragedy that you see playing out on our streets every day. So, not only has it become politically relevant, it shows how on the ball the royal family are with the issues facing the country.
This is a really good point. I never thought of it that way. I thought maybe they were invading each other's territory. But really, William could say, well, I'm not an expert in it, but he's well read and he does as much as he can. He can, help Andy Burnham with his
I really feel, if they don't get too involved in politics, the royals can be such a valuable sounding board because, as someone put it to me, they almost have the best focus groups available to anyone because they're constantly travelling the country. They're meeting people from all walks of life. They're getting a great overview of what's happening on the ground. I feel they should be having more conversations.
Yeah, definitely. And, William is very clear that he wants to be, when he becomes king, a consequential king. He wants to do things. So he's going to be slightly prime ministerial himself in the best possible way. Obviously, we know where the line is. But he wants to get things done. So he's already started as Prince of Wales with homelessness, the Earthshot Prize, of course, as well. And we'll see more of that. And because, what William doesn't want to do, he's going to reform the monarchy, modernise it. He doesn't want to open hospital wings. He's not going to be this ceremonial figure. Of course, part of that will be required. But you notice his calendar, his schedule. He's already scaled back a lot of those public events. And I think that sets the tone for his reign.
It's worth pointing out that we haven't seen much from William or Catherine for around a week now because they have basically finished off maybe for the summer. But we did see the King literally about an hour after the kissing hands ceremony with Burnham. He was off working in
He popped up to Cambridge to
He
visit.
popped up to Cambridge to open up an eco-mosque or visit an eco-mosque and visit a laboratory.
He just sort of squeezed in the prime ministerial appointment into his existing engagements. It's like,
no,
just
not
shuffle
another
things
one.
around a little bit.
Yeah, that was brilliant. It's a very good point. It was literally just, I'll do the quick appointment there with the important bit there with the Prime Minister, then I'm straight up to Cambridge to carry on with the work.
But he's so experienced now. This is, his third time of going through this procedure, so he knows exactly how to play it.
Yeah. Let's talk about Ruby wedding anniversaries. Now, it isn't officially a Ruby wedding anniversary because they divorced many years ago, but this week would have been, if they stuck together, the 40th anniversary for Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and Sarah Ferguson. Now, they're not in a good place at the moment, let's be honest. Andrew is up in... He's up at Marsh Farm, up at Sandringham. We don't really know where Sarah Ferguson is. But do you think the pair of them would maybe quietly remark upon or get in contact over the fact that they were married 40 years ago? Don't forget, they lived together until just earlier this year. They were still living together.
It's funny, isn't it? Because Fergie always described them as the happiest divorced couple in the world. I imagine she doesn't feel quite the same now, given everything that has gone down between then and now. But obviously there was a lot of affection and friendship still up until fairly recently, and they do have the daughters in common. They're about to become grandparents again. I can see a world in which they are in contact.
Do you think have they abandoned each other, do you think? Or are they, as Emily says, they're still in contact and maybe have a...
Emily, you're absolutely right about that. I'm old enough to remember when they got married, and I remember the courtship, and it was so playful, and they were genuinely in love. There was a real chemistry and a big attraction between the two of them as well. So it was just, it started so well. It augured so well for a fresh, modern marriage in the royal family. And it's soured quite quickly. I think partly because Andrew was overseas so much with the Navy, and I think that was really hard for Sarah Ferguson, who, to be fair, is quite a high-maintenance individual, I would say. Very damaged person from such a chaotic childhood and a disordered domestic setting with her dad running off and having affairs and all the rest of it. So they're both probably quite damaged people. But yeah, I think there was a sustained friendship over the years. And what's happened is that it was also transactional. Sarah Ferguson needed somewhere to live, so the Royal Lodge was perfect. I'm told they were in very different wings.
They were. They lived quite
bumping into
separately.
each other in the kitchen in the dead of night.
I don't think either of them were doing much cooking, but...
No. But the only thing that I'm hearing is that Sarah Ferguson feels aggrieved that she's somehow been cast as the person responsible for the whole Epstein saga. And I think that sticks in the craw. What's interesting, of course, she's got the ultimate nuclear weapon, hasn't she? Sarah Ferguson, My Story.
Well, she has written one. She's written a few over the years.
She's written very anodyne ones.
Yeah, she could go much further, but I don't know what... the public appetite would probably be quite
She
high,
knows
I
where
would
the bodies
think.
are buried, though, doesn't she?
She does, but
Yeah,
it
but does she
depends.
have-
But she doesn't want to... She will not want to endanger her daughter's relationship with the monarchy and with the king and with their cousin William in particular. I think at the end of the day, she is a mother, and she probably does feel... I'm sure she has great regrets about the effect it's had on Beatrice and Eugenie. And so I would hope that would prevent her from taking that kind of drastic of a step.
If you think about this marriage, and I'm old enough as well, I remember at school, they sat us in assembly and we watched it. Actually watched it in assembly at school to
Who knew you'd be doing this now?
I know, who knew? But looking back, was it just doomed from the very beginning, or could they have still been happily married? But also, is it surely the most significant marriage in the royal family for the last 40 or 50 years because of what has happened since? All the scandals that have wrapped around Sarah, even when they were splitting up, have wrapped around her since, and bringing down Andrew with all the Epstein scandals.
I don't know. I mean, you could definitely argue that Charles and Diana had huge repercussions as well. But that marriage, I think, I can't see how it would have worked long term. She said, you know, and we're looking back with hindsight, aren't we? They did appear to be very happy together, but he was away for long periods of time. Obviously, very much part of an institution which it's hard for anyone to enter into in terms of coming in as a woman, particularly. And if you look at the relationships that have succeeded, it's been people who've come from the outside from very stable family backgrounds. And as you point out...
Like Catherine.
Hers, yes, and Sarah's wasn't. And she'd be the first to admit that. And then you also have to couple it with the real challenges in that period of the way that, you know, the media was covering things. There was probably a lot of exposure of what was going on that might not have happened in previous generations.
And we're stopped from doing now as well.
Well, they haven't helped themselves.
I mean, I
let's be
think
honest.
they're also at the heart of it, both very flawed personalities. I might indulge in some Sun newspaper-style tabloidies, a pair of wrong uns. And I think what's happened is that perhaps if Andrew had had a more upstanding spouse, or perhaps if it was Sarah Ferguson that had found a sensible husband, it could have played out differently. But you put those two together, Andrew, with his wild hubris, his arrogance, his entitlement, which is not matched by any intelligence or talent. And then you got Sarah, this flawed individual, a spendthrift, a very indulgent personality. It's a recipe for disaster, and that's exactly how it played out. You know, the money, the sex, the scandal, the politics, they enabled each other and created a monster.
I do think money's a big factor in it as well, because, and this is the situation that's continuing to echo now, isn't it? With Harry, it's the need to make money. If you are the spare, you don't have a defined role. Therefore, if someone's not there to guide you and shape you and direct that, are you then prone to going off and meeting very wealthy individuals overseas? I think that was a real vulnerability.
It's a good point, you know. And Andrew, you could offer a note of sympathy to him that it's been argued, one of the reasons why he stayed in touch with the truly wicked Epstein is in order to help Fergie pay her bills. Because, I mean, Sarah in particular had a problem with money. I mean, profligacy doesn't even go there, does it? In Andrew Loney's book, he reports that she used to buy, when she flew, 2 or 3 club class tickets, not one, in case she bumped into someone on the way to the airport and they could fly.
I could do with a friend like that.
I know.
Not a bad idea, is it?
Well, let's move on to some happier things. Not obviously, you know, they divorced 40 years ago, so we can't really celebrate the wedding anniversary. So let's move on to something slightly happier. George, teenage kicks. He's 13 years old this week. How did that happen?
It makes me feel very old. I was there. I was there waiting for my own prince outside the hospital, and it's happened in the blink of an eye, hasn't it? And I do think William and Catherine must be looking at him and thinking, how has he got so big? And here we are on the cusp of him starting at Eton. It's a whole new layer of independence that he's going to take on, but then all the concerns that come with that, which any parent of a teenager has, you know, social media, phones. I think they've got that sewn up, Eton's sort of banned smartphones for kids. But so many things for them to get their head around at the moment. How
do you think they're getting on, the Waleses? We often give them an enormous amount of credit for the amount of time they spend with their children, the amount that they are kind of in control of their profile, and they do actually, you know, control when we actually see them. But how do you think, for the small glimpses that we get of George, how do you think they're succeeding or failing with George?
I think they've done a brilliant job. I mean, we don't know him that well at all, but we think we know him enough. And I think that's a really careful balance that they've struck. And it's one that they set out to right from his birth. You know, William didn't want to repeat the pattern that he'd experienced as a child. He understood, you know, the strain that came with being in the media constantly. And he's been really careful to protect his own children from that. But they know how to give us just enough. And so we see him increasingly popping up and joining his family on engagements, semi-official duties, going to RAF Coningsby recently, Wimbledon. I think they try to make it as fun as possible for him so that it doesn't feel too arduous and that the responsibility element of his future role is sort of put on the back burner for as long as possible.
Well, do you think, because he's still very young, he's just about to go to Eton later this year, do you think we will see, because we've seen, as you say, couple of, I remember D-Day or VE Day, I think we kind of seen him a couple of times as well. Do you think and Wimbledon, do you think we'll see him more or less when he goes into proper full-time secondary education at Eton, where he's going to have to take exams and there's going to be everything that comes with being a teenager, right? It's not
I
the
think they'll
easiest time of
scale
your
it
life.
back. I think they'll scale it back, don't you?
I think it'll be similar, if not slightly less than it is now, because they will want him to fully focus on that. And really, I think one of the reasons they chose Eton is because it is a kind of cocoon for him. William experienced it himself. It's where he managed to have a very happy education despite everything that was going on in his family, and of course obviously the loss of his mother, which was a devastating moment, and Eton gave him security and protection and nurtured him. So I think he probably recognises that. There is a question mark over whether or not they could have done something less traditional, because in so many other ways, you know, here we have a young future heir to the throne who's going down to watch Villa with his dad, and you know, he's hanging out with Taylor Swift, and he's doing much more, less relatable than, because not all of us are getting to do those things, but he's, I feel, like a lot more in tune with his generation. And so there was possibly a window for them to do something a bit less
I
traditional.
heard that Catherine wasn't too keen on Eton, and she was looking at perhaps a more modern setting for his education, but security issues and proximity to home probably
I
prevailed.
do think there is an argument for an all-boys school, certainly academically, and then you also have to consider, you know, if there were lots of girls at school as well, whether they would be pestering him.
Yeah.
They, you know, perhaps
What
have ambitious parents.
What, future Meghan Markles?
That's
to come.
Let's not get ahead
Let's
of
give him
ourselves.
time.
Yeah.
But one of the interesting things is that he's got two siblings.
Yeah.
He's going to be boarding. You have to board at Eton. I know it's just round the corner, but all of a sudden, I know he was kind of boarding on and off, wasn't he, at Lambrook? But now Charlotte and Louis, they don't have their bigger brother either.
No, that's right. And that will be a shame and it will be a great loss. But I think it's such an unusual lifestyle that these kids have. And I think that the stability and the continuity of boarding is actually appropriate, because I think the royals are akin to like a military family. Lots of military families have their children at boarding school so that there's a through line and a consistency. And I think ultimately it's going to play out quite well. I mean, even Harry was quite content at Eton, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he enjoyed it as much as William did at all.
He struggled academically.
He did. But I do think that George will, you know, it's a fantastic opportunity for any kid to get that, you know, level of attention and education. And I'm sure he has been raised to understand how privileged he is.
Well, happy birthday, George. I mean, as I say, 13. In 5 years' time, we'll be 18. Honestly, those years will just fly by.
You're so right. And I will just say that fair play to the Prince and Princess of Wales for how they've raised the kids and for how they've got that balance between the kids being public and private. And I do think, without labouring the point about the Sussexes, you know, they left the UK for privacy and deploy now Archie and Lily as part of their brand, which we've seen, of course, increasingly on Instagram. And I'll just quote, in terms of how the Waleses have done it with their kids, Elton John, at the height of his fame in the mid-70s, said, "The public know everything about me and nothing about me, and that's how I like it."
We will move on in a minute, but just you mentioned the Sussexes, and it's just suddenly at some
They're living rent-free in my head.
At some stage, Lily, whichever you want to call her.
Well, I know
and Archie,
our viewers get
and Archie,
furious when we say
I know,
Lilibet.
I know, so I do both just for fun. But Lily, and Archie, at some stage, will have to meet George, Charlotte, and Louis at some kind of function. They're not going to be kept apart forever. And I just wonder, I just love to be, I just wonder what's going to happen when they all grow up.
I think that Harry and Meghan's royal return is a massive bear trap for the future reign of William and Catherine. And it's going to be generational, because when Archie and Lily are teenagers and grown-ups, they may well perpetuate the rival royal court. Yikes.
It'll give us loads more to talk about. But let's hope. Let's just hope people are happy. Celebrate your 13th birthday, grow up well, and everyone just be happy in the future. Why can't we just have that, eh? Right, just me then.
It?
Right, just got time for our quickfire questions, okay? So the King is said to be earmarking a state visit to Spain after, they beat our arch nemesis Argentina in the World Cup final, so thank you. Who should the King take with him on his state visit to Spain?
Me and you. Coming?
That's actually a great idea.
Yeah.
Let's make it a road trip.
All right, deal. Question number 2. Prince George, as we pointed out, turns 13 today, but what would you get him for his birthday?
I would get him a giant hoodie that he can put right down over his head, like a certain 12 to 13-year-old I know quite well. Because if he's going to be venturing out onto the high street in Eton, as he will be allowed to, he might want a little bit, some kind of disguise. You know, try and stay as low-key as he possibly can.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea, is it? Just with the letters HRH on his back, just
Very
in
subtle.
case.
And with a
there's any
security
doubt.
guard walking 3 yards
Yes.
behind him.
I think that he should be gifted a copy of the book Spare. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Never heard of it.
Yes, and he should read every page so that he can understand what a threat his uncle is to the royal establishment.
I wonder if they've already read it.
Of course they have.
Of course they have.
How could they not?
Bedtime reading. And finally, what should Andrew and Fergie do to celebrate their would-have-been 40th wedding anniversary?
Stay on different continents.
I don't know. When you're celebrating 40 years, even if you're divorced, you're feeling nostalgic, aren't you? So is it a trip back to Epstein's Island, just for old time's sake? Or maybe more locally, Pizza Express Woking?
And on that note, we just got time to wrap up. But thanks, guys. I had really a lot of fun, and I think we went through a lot, and
Thank
I
you.
learned quite a bit from you too as well. So I appreciate having you both on. Right, that's all we have time for on this week's Royal Exclusive. Thanks to my guests Mark and Emily, and thanks to you for watching. And as always, remember to comment and subscribe to us here on our Royal Exclusive YouTube channel for the latest royal news. We'll see you next week.